larger level, you talked about the International Bank of Settlements. Explain what that is and how they use that as a mass coercion tool via big business.
So the Bank for International Settlements was set up in 1930. It's the central bank for the national central banks. And so it's owned privately, just as federal central banks are owned privately. And through its manipulation of transactions and currencies and inflation rates and the other things that are controlled by central bankers, they have a direct sort of door to the legislatures because Congress doesn't set up its own monetary system. It depends on the Federal Reserve in our case. And that same thing is true in other countries. Much better person to talk about this is Catherine Austin Fitts. So what I know from listening to what she talks about and from Adam Labour's book, Tower of Basel, Basel. So it started in 1930, and that's how the mechanism works. And it can go all the way down to, like you were saying, losing your PayPal account, losing your job, if you're a corporation, especially if you're a corporation that has any federal contracts, you will be subject to losing your access to federal contracts if you don't comply with things like the federal contractor mandate that the Biden administration put in 2021. Yeah.
So on top of that, you just mentioned the government aspect of this, and you talked about how you not only had federal laws, but then you went down to the state level. Well, I would argue even within the counties, when we're talking about this monetary mechanism, they're also beholden to it. A lot of people think the COVID 1984 nightmare is over, but in fact, down to the county level, they've signed on to a lot of this authoritarianism via funding that's going to come over the next decade plus, correct?
Yes, those are called intergovernmental agreements, or IGAs, and those contracts to get the money packages through things like the CARES Act at the beginning, and going forward it'll be the same. To get the money, they have to do the programs and follow the instructions that are given to them by the executive branch of the federal government. And the other piece about the county level is that starting in the mid 2000s, there was a big push to do joint training exercises between federal military law enforcement and public health officials and state and local law enforcement officers and healthcare workers, to train them in the idea that when these public health emergencies are declared, the law enforcement officers are supposed to go around and control populations and get them to behaviorally comply with these orders. And the healthcare workers are supposed to be the front line that administers the weapons, calling them medicinal products, to the population. And so all of the counties also have emergency preparedness plans. And those also, it would be good if, as the counties and their county commissioners start to wake up and the county sheriffs start to wake up, if they repeal those emergency management plans and make it clear that when the orders come down from the Health and Human Services Secretary through the state health departments to the counties, the county law enforcement officers and the county healthcare workers are not going to carry out the instructions, because they understand now that the instructions are to kill the population or to round them up so they can be killed elsewhere.